From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast, and I'm your host, Melissa Morgan. With me today is my handsome and talented co-host, Rib Smoking Bevan.
Rib smoking.
I didn't say dick smoking.
Well, hey, you're not wrong.
My dog almost devoured Joshua because he has rib detritus on his hands.
Yeah.
Even though he swears he washed them 4 times.
I mean, it kind of gets in there. I was prepping the ribs and very much handling the meat.
I was going to say, oh my God. I tried so hard and I knew it was going to go there.
It's not, I didn't take it there. You just took it there in your own head.
Sure. It's always me. How does one prepare ribs?
Do you want a lesson? Over the radio? I can give you
I just thought you could describe it, but you don't have to. Never mind. I don't fucking care.
No, okay. Well, I get
Lowry seasoned salt.
I get spare ribs.
Yes.
And spare ribs is the whole ribs,
pork? I don't know.
Pork ribs.
Okay.
And you got to chop the sternum and the rest off so that they're now St. Louis style cut spare ribs.
Okay.
You got to tear the membrane off, so you have to kind of get there's a membrane between the ribs on like the back side of the ribs. If you cook that turns into like paper. It's gross. It's not delicious. So you take that off before you cook, and it's kind of tough to take off. So you got to get a like butter knife underneath, and then you use paper towels to rip it off, and then dry rub, salt, pepper, onion, garlic. Very simple dry rub.
You had me till membrane, and then I checked out. That sounds very Fred Flintstone.
Smoking over cherry wood all day today.
It has to be cherry wood?
That's what I'm using today. It doesn't have to be.
Oh, okay. No, I thought maybe, is that just a favorite, or do you switch it up?
I'll switch it up. Sometimes some of the sweeter woods are nice. Apple, pecan. But I like cherry.
This is a interesting lesson. Thank you. By the way, not to point fingers, but there's a wonderful study that came out this week on at what age do men emotionally mature?
God.
43.
Tell me when it happens.
You got a year.
Okay.
43. You got one more year to be what you are.
Okay.
And then next year, you fucking better step it up, buddy. 43.
Oh boy.
Is that not that? I thought that was fascinating.
Okay.
It made perfect sense to me.
So I'm okay that I'm still in my 12-year-old emotional state until now.
I don't, as you remind me quite often, it's a spectrum. So I don't think everything's a spectrum, but you go ahead and use it for every fucking thing in your life and mine. I don't expect you to mature at 43.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't think you're going to do that.
I'm glad your expectations are at a reasonable level.
Are you 42 or 41?
No, I'm 42.
Okay. I thought so.
I had to do math right then.
I was like, did I get it confused? And I was like, no, I thought you were 42. Okay. Yeah. Believe me, no expectations, my friend. I don't, So this last week, yesterday, was my birthday. And thank you so much.
32 or 31?
32.
Yeah, okay.
Or 1,000. And thank you to Joshua for it. This was last week. He surprised me, but because he likes to get in early, I've heard. But he made me red velvet cupcakes with cream cheese icing in the form of unicorns. And I got a balloon, and I got a bag that said "Eat Cake," and lots of unicorn toys. And my favorite thing ever, which is I don't know, we call it Funko Pop or Pop Funko. I always get it confused, of James Madison from Hamilton. So it was pretty spectacular.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you had a good birthday.
All of it.
Thank you for inviting me out last night also.
Oh yeah, we went to see a comedy show in our area, and it was interesting. The comics were great and the audience was awful.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. but I think we had a good time. And I wore, Joshua got me also a little headband with cupcakes on it that said, what's it say, birthday princess or birthday queen or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I forgot already.
So I told him I was going to wear it on my birthday. So I wore it, unfortunately, to this restaurant/bar that has comedy. And everyone who went on stage wanted to draw attention to it. And I'm like, this was a mistake to wear this. But it was still fun. It was a good evening out. And I think everybody needs some time to laugh. At least I know I do. It's very helpful. So I need to thank Tipster Michelle for the unicorn pillows and unicorn socks. And Joshua loves them as much as I do, especially the little really cool unicorn of death. The pillow with the unicorn of death. Yeah, he really likes that.
Yeah, that's neat. The unicorn and the other one is the unicorn
flipping off
with the I don't know how
she does it either, because they have like cloven hooves, but she has like a middle finger.
Yeah,
and then at the bottom it just says no.
No.
Yeah, I love it so much. I need to thank Allison for a box of everything. I got it the night before my birthday, and I waited till my birthday to open it up, and it has so many things in it. One thing I have like close by, hold on. It's a little leather coin purse that says "My Little Bag of Fucks," and it's purple leather. And she included some money inside, so in case I'm ever out and I don't have money for Mountain Dew Kickstart.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, she's spectacular. And Alicia and Emily for flowers. The flowers they sent me are so beautiful. They're purple with some white roses, and they have adopted me, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. I will be in Kentucky, and Joshua will be in Mexico. Who are you more jealous of? We had sort of planned our trips out of town without knowing the other one was going to be out of town.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It did work out sort of perfect. It really, really did. So I'm going to be in Kentucky for a couple weeks. So prepare yourself, people. By the time you hear this, I'll already be there. But and any of our listeners from Mexico, Josh will be in your waters.
I'll be there.
So get your scope for your gun.
I was hoping to meet for margaritas. But
okay. So whichever, guess, whatever comes up. Margaritas, rifle practice. I don't know. I'm just putting it all out there. All of the things. So this is a really interesting missing persons case. We can pretty much assume that she's no longer with us. It's interesting to me for a couple of reasons. Her sisters and her mother are trying to hold out the torch for Linda Peterson, who went missing in March of 2019. And they post things on Facebook. And just to let you know, I tried really hard to get a hold of them, but they have some sort of privacy setting that says you can't send them a message. They don't accept messages.
Oh, okay.
So I couldn't get a hold of them, and I tried. Also tried to get a hold of the Baker City Police. This is Baker City, Oregon.
Okay. And
you will find out later in this episode one reason why I did not get a hold of the police chief. I tried him, and I also tried the detective in charge of Linda's case now. His name is Detective Wayne Chastain. And the Baker City Police Chief is Ty Duby, D-U-B-Y. And I'll explain later why. So what I can get is this phenomenal coverage by this journalist, Jason Jacoby, and it's Jayson, with the Baker City Herald. I don't know when I have read something about a missing person or a homicide victim written so beautifully. He lays out the facts and includes real feelings and emotions from her family. I mean, he's way more than a journalist.
Way cool.
Yeah, cool. He's phenomenal. Everything is so lined up. It's just, I just kept marveling every like sentence or paragraph I read. I was like, this guy's amazing.
Cool.
So most of the information is pretty updated. It's the end of 2022 is when he put the spotlight on Linda's case. And one of the things that's lovely is he starts off with some quotes of different family members. The first one is from Loretta Lane, who's Linda Peterson's sister. And she says, I always hope that someone's going to come forward, for everyone's sake, especially my mom. She needs to know what happened before she's gone. It eats her up. And she talks about my sister all the time.
Mm.
Her other sister, Lucille Lane, says she would help anybody, including, I believe, the people who did this to her.
Oh, wow.
She was that good of a person. The police chief says, this is an active homicide investigation. We followed every single lead that we've ever gotten, and we continue to do so. The person or persons responsible were known to Linda, associated with her. We're pretty focused on a very limited number of people and kind of always have been. So here's where Chief Doobie and I are on opposite ends of the camp.
Oh.
He doesn't believe, because it's a small group of people that probably know, he doesn't believe any sort of putting it out there is going to help.
Oh, okay.
He even discouraged the family from distributing missing flyers.
Oh, wow.
Later in this episode, you're going to hear a quote from him, but I don't understand that thinking.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand why.
I know.
Like, what's the harm?
Right. Thank you.
I mean, I can understand the idea of, okay, it's not going to help.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does.
Right. What's the harm in trying anyway?
Right. Right. So Linda Peterson had a tough life. She was 51, and according to her sisters, they had all gone through horrific abuse when they were younger, very traumatic. And unfortunately, like a lot of sensitive, artistic people, because Linda was a really lovely artist, very authentic, did a lot of beautiful nature sketches, cabins, and running brooks and trees.
Cool.
Very, very beautiful work.
Cool.
She unfortunately used substances to quell her pain.
Shit, okay.
So she spent some time on the streets, and she also went to a lot of work to clear up her life and get herself back on track. And yet she still believed she was safer in the streets. And at this point, I don't know that I disagree with her because of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So Linda's mother, Sarah, points out a picture that Linda had drawn, and she said, she sat here and drew that in front of me in 30 minutes. She's really, really good. Sarah will sometimes refer to Linda in the past tense. She'll slip and refer to her in the past tense, but she tries very much to refer to her in the present.
Aww.
That she's still with us. I think it's pretty clear that she's probably not. Yeah. And here's just one of the beautiful ways that Jason Jacoby describes Linda's story. He said, it remains unfinished. It's a book with its final chapters ripped from the binding.
Ouch. Wow.
Yeah, he's a really fucking great writer. So even though they believe that Linda is dead and they think they know who did it, they still refer to her in the present because you know what? We don't know. We won't know until and if we find something. So in March of 2019, she was at her home, which she shared with some other people. It's an apartment. I don't know if it would be like a halfway house or a group home, but she had recently completed a rehab program.
Okay.
She was already clean, but I think she thought she needed a booster.
Extra help. Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Good.
So Sarah's oldest daughter, Loretta, she's just a year and a half older than Linda. They all grew up in Grants Pass, Oregon. And she drives by the apartment, the last apartment where Linda was seen, 2450 Broadway Street in Baker City, and she just has to pull over and cry every time she drives by the apartment. Loretta said, "Sometimes I get angry. Whoever's done this needs to be brought to justice by the law." I agree, Loretta. So Baker City Police Chief Ty Doobie says, "This is an active homicide investigation, and I promise you we followed every single lead." I don't know that I agree with him. He also says that they've gotten tips as late as 2022. So they're still getting tips, which I don't know why you would not want word to get out there. It's very,
So
I'm sure he has some thought process. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. So her family, became alarmed in March of 2019 when she didn't attend a dance recital for her granddaughter. Some of the pictures of her and her family are so lovely. I mean, she was in her early 50s, but you can tell she'd had a hard life. But pictures of her look one way, and pictures of her with her grandkids, it's like a light has been turned on. It's like a light is turned on inside of her, and everything, all the hard stuff looks like it melts away out of her face. She was obviously a really deep soul. So one of her children, Alicia Lawrence, became immediately worried. She was like, "Look, my mom is very regulated. She keeps to a schedule. She would never have missed her granddaughter's recital." And Alicia had been appointed Linda's legal guardian 2 years earlier. That was when she'd left a drug treatment center. And, her daughter is her legal guardian. And even though Linda had moved to Baker City to be closer to family, she had ended up living on the streets for periods of time before her family helped her move into the apartment she was in on Broadway. And they are sorry in one way that they told her to move in there because they think that's where the circumstances went bad.
God, okay.
And she said, "I'm safer on the streets." When she was living on the streets, though, there were times when she wouldn't be in contact with her family and she would just disappear and not tell anyone, and probably when she was using.
Yeah.
So about a month before she went missing, her sister Loretta is dropping her off at her apartment, and Linda begins to act kind of strange, like, kind of concerned, worried about going back in her apartment.
Yeah.
Loretta said, "I had a feeling something was wrong. She was not herself." And she said specifically, Linda was afraid to go in to her apartment. And she said, "I'm frightened of the people who are staying with me.
No.
I'm frightened of the people who are staying with me." That's a big red flag. And because I think Linda, I'm just going to say in the past tense, was so sensitive. I mean, you'll find out later, she had a really hard way to go, and she volunteered to help other people who had gone through what she had and other things.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, she was a giver. Her sister Loretta said she hesitated to get out of the car. She stood there for a minute, not saying anything. She just stood in front of the building. And I wish I would have gone up there and said, "You can come back with me," or walked her into the apartment to see who was there.
Right.
And she also says, this is just Loretta's theory. She said, "I think there were people at the apartment that maybe shouldn't have been there."
Man.
So this behavior, Linda was a sweet, sensitive soul, but pretty strong. So this is weird behavior that she is afraid to go into her own apartment. And her sister Loretta says, she's always been independent and strong. A few days later, Loretta finds out that Linda is missing, and she starts to panic. And she goes back in her mind and remembers other conversations with Linda in about a month before she went missing. And she said, that's when I started to notice changes in her behavior. And then she also started to say, here's what I would like to happen if I were to die.
Oh.
Right. So there are people that believe that Linda ended her own life. I think you're going to hear that's probably not a really good possibility because she, been through the shit and was enjoying her life and lived for her grandkids.
Yeah.
I don't see it or feel it. And I think you'll see here what might have happened. Her mother, Sarah, said, a few weeks before she disappeared, she told me she was afraid of the people that were living with her.
Oh, okay.
And Sarah says, I think my daughter was a victim of her own kindness, and I think the people who lived with her ended up killing her. Sarah said she always tried to help people out because she had lived on the street. She tried to help people that she had met there. Her sister Lucille says she'd always kind of taken the outcasts and the troubled ones. She'd been in and out of that lifestyle herself. Her mother, Sarah, said, I wonder if I made a mistake trying to talk her into moving into that apartment. Sarah said, I talked her into moving in there. I wish I hadn't. She told me she was safer on the streets. I didn't believe her.
Oh, God. What a burden to be holding.
Her sister Lucille says, I remember in the middle of March of 2019, I learned that she was missing from her daughter, Alicia, and I got a sick feeling. My stomach just turned. Linda was very schedule-oriented. She had never disappeared without telling anyone like that. She said that Linda suffered from severe depression. And Loretta, after Linda's disappearance, had moved to New Hampshire for a couple of months just to get away from Baker City. And I guess she was with a friend. And then she finally came back because she couldn't handle Linda being missing.
Oh.
So one of the people that's really holding out a flag for Linda is her daughter-in-law. Her daughter-in-law, Stephanie Mailman. And her sisters and her daughter-in-law. But her daughter-in-law lives in LeGrand, and she's married to Linda's son, Anthony. And she believes not only was Linda murdered, but that she knows who's involved.
Oh.
She thinks it's a pair, a man and a woman, and they seem very linked to every recent story about Linda before she moved or before she disappeared.
Okay.
These two people, this man and this woman, many people have, given them these names, given the detectives tips on who they are. So her daughter-in-law and her daughter cleaned out Linda's apartment after she disappeared. They both say that was a mistake, that it should have been, preserved.
Detectives should have looked at everything. Okay.
She believes, and I agree, that it wasn't because the cops thought it's a drug addict who's missing.
Sure.
She, fell off the wagon again, or it makes me really sick.
Yeah.
But Stephanie and Alicia said, there's no evidence that there was a struggle in that apartment. There's no blood. There's no marks. They really looked around like they did the detectives' jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone believes, she was killed someplace else, like she was taken from there. Stephanie said, whatever happened didn't happen here at this apartment. Even though Linda had this history of drug addiction, and even when she wasn't using, she had friends who both used and sold drugs. They think that the motivation for her murder was money. She had withdrawn $400 from a bank account just before she went missing.
Oh.
Her mother, Sarah, says, I think the two people that did it, I think they wanted that money. And to think that someone could kill a beautiful soul for $400, for $400.
Wow.
Chief Doobie says officers did remove items from Linda's apartment, including sections of carpet and furniture. The items were tested, but none yield evidence that suggested any crime had been committed in the apartment. And he said, that doesn't mean that Linda wasn't harmed there. It's just an unknown.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, Detective Sergeant Wayne Chastain was put in charge of Linda's case in 2021. The person who was the lead before then was Detective Shannon Regan, and she had left to go on maternity leave, and that's when Detective Sergeant Wayne Chastain took over. The family really appreciated Detective Regan's efforts because she kept in touch with them about information they got. She was still working the case and kept them updated with, constant communication. And she said, this is her mother, Sarah, says, you know what? They really haven't kept in touch with us recently.
Oh, no.
The chief says, I understand why Linda's loved ones are frustrated. I would be frustrated too. There's no body that's been found and no one's been charged. So the chief said that he obtained warrants to search multiple different buildings and properties where there were known drug deals going on. They even used cadaver dogs as well as drug sniffing dogs.
Okay.
Police towed a van from one property that, according to rumors, might have been involved in Linda's disappearance, and that she had been in the van possibly after she died.
Oh.
The chief said, we tore that van apart. There was not one iota of evidence. None of the other searches has turned up evidence about Linda's whereabouts either. Chief Doobie shares the suspicion of Linda's family that Linda probably knew who killed her. He says this is not a bushy-haired stranger kind of situation. The person or persons responsible were known to Linda, associated with her, were pretty focused on a very limited number of people and always have been. The chief said that Linda's file in their department contains 1,000 pages of documentation.
Wow.
That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
For this to still be
still
unsolved.
Yeah.
One area of contention between Chief Doobie and Linda's relatives is the value of distributing new flyers about her disappearance. Stephanie, who maintains a Facebook page where she frequently posts about Linda's case, contends that putting out flyers not only would let people know we haven't forgotten her, but could potentially also prompt someone who is involved in her disappearance or has any information about that to contact police. And I think Stephanie is right.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have gotten a hold of Stephanie if I couldn't get a hold of the police, which I think we know how that was going to go. If they don't even sanction something like as grassroots as handing out missing flyers.
Right.
I'm trying to understand his mindset, and I know I won't. Is it because he thinks the family shouldn't spend money on 1,000 flyers? Is it because he thinks missing flyers historically haven't been helpful? Because I think that's wrong.
I mean, but even if you don't, I disagree with this idea, but even if you don't think it's going to work, how are you against it? Why, like I get not having faith,
right?
But what's wrong with
you're right?
Doing something, letting them grieve in that way, and and put in the work, and
as you said, it may not help, but how does it hurt?
Yeah.
If he won't let them hand out missing flyers, can you imagine how open he'd be to a podcast? I mean, you can see why I didn't get a call back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still don't get it. I bet he has some good reasons, but I'm not able to discern that. Stephanie said that her hope is that the people involved could be influenced by remorse or guilt. And while I love that that's her mindset, I don't know that would happen. I also know it has, people have. Stephanie said, I want to put pressure on people who have knowledge that could help resolve this case.
Yeah.
Lucille got a call in March of 2021 from a woman who said her niece claimed to have been present when Linda was killed.
Oh.
The woman told Lucille that her niece, the supposed witness, had been threatened by someone who had been involved in Linda's killing. Lucille said, I don't know if this story is true. And Chief Doobie says, I understand the family's motivation about publicity, but he thinks there's very, very few people out there who know what happened, and possibly only those that were directly involved in Linda's death. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, how does it hurt to talk about Linda and get her case out there just in case someone sees a flyer,
Right.
just in case someone listens to this podcast and says,
Absolutely.
I know what happened. I know, or I think I know, or I might know.
Yeah, all it takes is one little tidbit,
Right.
one lead, and then there's a whole mess of evidence behind it, right?
That is every
every
good detective's way of thinking, Joshua.
okay.
It is.
Yeah.
I've heard even detectives that are like reticent to talk on podcasts or whatever. They're like, they want to make sure this statement gets out every time. Even if it's something you think is not important, it may be important.
Right.
Please tell us.
Yeah.
It may sound like nothing to you, and it may be something to us.
Yeah.
The chief says none of the people that we have talked to or that we think were involved have confessed, and it's going on 4 years. And I'm skeptical that publicity will persuade anyone to do so.
Yeah.
Well, the Baker County District Attorney, Greg Baxter, said, I want a fresh set of eyes on this case. So he asked that Detective Chastain take over, especially after Detective Regan went on maternity leave. District Attorney Baxter said that they have received many leads in Linda's disappearance since 2022, and they will continue to run down each one. He said, this is an active case we are pursuing. We are working hard. Linda's relatives say they understand that police are still working on the case, but they felt like there wasn't enough attention in the early stages of her being missing. And now, I don't know how true it is that the first 48 hours are the most important, but I think it was a couple of days that before they knew she was missing.
Sure.
So they were behind a couple of days, and then I'm just going to say I think they thought, oh, it's a drug addict who's missing.
Right.
Big deal. She's done it before. Even Stephanie, who helped clear out Linda's apartment, said, I don't think we should have been allowed to remove items from her apartment before it was searched by the police. Yeah. Her son, Anthony, said, I don't feel my mom's case is getting the attention it deserves. And he attributes it to Linda's socioeconomic status.
Sure.
And her history,
absolutely it is.
As being transient. And if it were different, he thinks police would have been much more aggressive. So the relatives remembering Linda said she's very artistic and kind. She would help anybody, including, I believe, the people who did this. She had even worked on an astrological chart for her sister. And, it's something Lucille cherishes. She said, I still have it. Linda was very interested in astrology. Stephanie said that when her husband, who is Linda's son, had gone to prison for selling drugs, that Linda stayed with her for more than a year to help with her grandkids.
Oh, wow.
And Stephanie said, I wish Mom were here now to help me. I feel like a single mom, and I knew if she were here to help me, things would be better. I know it without a doubt. Stephanie said her older son, who's 8, keeps asking, where is Grandma Linda? It's really hard. It doesn't get easier. We all want the same thing. Our number one goal is to bring Mom home. And this was her daughter-in-law calling her Mom.
Yeah. Wow.
So even though Linda had suffered from mental illness as well as struggling with addiction, she was a volunteer at Mayday in Baker City. And it's a victims advocacy agency that helps with domestic violence and sexual assault victims.
Wow.
Her sister Loretta said that she and Linda had been victims themselves when they were younger. Loretta said horrific things happened to me and my sister. I don't think she ever got over that. Not long before she disappeared, Linda had completed a 90-day treatment program in La Grande. Like I said, it wasn't a rehab. It was more like a, booster shot.
Sure.
One of the family's favorite pictures of Linda, that's what I was talking about, is one where she's smiling broadly. She's next to her granddaughter, and you could see her light up. There are pictures of her, obviously, when times were harder in her life, but it's just a whole different thing when you see her next to her granddaughter. It's almost like a peace comes over her face. Maybe her grandchildren brought her peace in her mind that was working too hard, trying to help other people, worried about where she lived. It's like even after all this time, nothing gets easier for her family.
Right.
Her sister Lucille said, I always hope that someone's going to come forward for everyone's sake, especially for my mom. She needs to know what happened to Linda before she's gone. I just keep hoping for some closure and some justice to be served. And I get you, Lucille. I think Linda's family is doing a great job with not a lot to work with.
Yeah.
I feel like they're doing the detective's job. And I don't sit and slam detectives, but I agree with her son. If Linda were in a different, class of people, it might have been a more aggressive kind of investigation. I think I think there's a difference between chief of police or detectives who are like, I don't want to do a podcast. I don't, it's wrong-headed thinking. They're usually willing to go on the news, which is the antithesis of a podcast. It's 2 minutes long, 5 minutes long at the most. It's there and gone.
Right.
Podcasts are in the ethers.
Right.
For years.
Totally.
I don't understand why you wouldn't want every eye or ear on a case of a missing person that you believe was murdered.
Right.
I'm still trying very hard not to judge him, but apparently I'm judging him. So if you know what could have happened to Linda Peterson or who could have done it, the Baker County Major Crime Team has offered a $2,500 reward. Crime Stoppers of Oregon has added that same amount, so it's a total of $5,000 for any information that leads to the arrest in connection with Linda Peterson's disappearance. Anyone with information can contact the Baker City Police Department at 541-524-2014, 541-524-2014. And I will tell you, their phone system is so circuitous, it will take you a while to get where you want to go. And even then, they don't have like a voicemail. It will route you back to the main switchboard.
No.
And you just might have to say, okay, connect me to dispatch. I never want to bother dispatchers.
Right.
But if this is the system you have in place, I'm going to fucking do it.
Sure.
I left messages for Chief Doobie as well as Detective Sergeant Chastain. And I have not heard back. I don't think anyone's shocked about that, least of all me. If you don't want to call the Baker City Police Department, please feel free to call us. If you have a tip on a missing person or unsolved homicide, if you want to suggest a case, if you know anything about Linda Peterson, please call us at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. And I don't give our number out when there's a number for the police, but I'm just telling you what I went through. It was really hard to get any sort of traction at all. I can't imagine they don't have a tip line, for things like that. I feel like the tips that have come in, people have probably had to work hard to be heard.
Wow.
You can always email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can find us on any of the social media platforms, just the Tipsters Facebook page, at JT Tipsters on Instagram, at JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter. and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.